Hi, hello, welcome. Welcome. My name's Connor Sites-Bowen. I'm with Pittsburgh Papercraft, and I've been painting miniatures for about 80 days now, and I thought I would run down what I've been painting and how it's all going. I did I've been painting for 40 days video 40 days ago, so this is another 40 days in, kind of doubling the amount of painting that got done. And so we're going to start here with a little bit of an evolution. I didn't actually paint this. This was a miniature I purchased about a decade ago. It was one of many that had been painted as part of a Warhammer Old Hammer, I guess you would call it, the Old World Lizardman army. And you can see it's got little tufts of grass. It's got a couple of different colors of paint going on. I was very impressed by this. I'm still very impressed by this. And now I have critique thoughts about it, which is new. I've painted a lot of lizardmen since then. You guys might remember Kami and Hoga down here. We'll come back up. Or I'll just push the whole pyramid. These guys I painted in December. I still gotta base them. And then this is the latest guy. And I'll bring him back in a little bit. This is one of the rowdy boys. And is actually the oldest lizard man represented amongst these many lizard folk, lizard people. I don't really want to gender them one way or the other. In any case, lots of lizard folk. Lots of them indeed. The two lizard men in the center are standing on a platform which is 2 inches high, which is to say 10 feet by 15 feet by 15 feet at the top, and at the base it is 20 feet by 20 feet, which is to say 4 inches by 4 inches. This platform has the four-eyed face of the great river mother, an ancient and unknown being carved into this strange platform, which is part of the factory floor, which is a kit of 60 papercraft pages, which you cut and assemble to make a whole factory, the floor of it, as well as platforms and other papercraft pieces of a big, fantastical industrial space. And you'll see some more of that papercraft. I'll kind of throw it in over the course of the video, but let's get rid of these guys and kind of start at the beginning. So I'll start with the Tallwalker. The Tallwalker here was in the first video, but it was not a very good shot of the first video. I figure these will look a lot better and be a lot more sensible because, for one thing, the whole model is in frame, and that's important. I'm going to bring this lizard man back. This guy's going to stay here, I think, just to provide a sense of scale as he comes back into frame. Apologies that I keep putting things in frame that aren't in frame yet, but they will be. In any case, the Tallwalker is a very large creature. It's a creature that actually comes from Newtopia, which is the role-playing game setting book that I'm working on. It comes from one of the many overland hexes, and I actually wrote a little zine about it called The Preservation. It's hex B2-1, and the Preservation booklet describes 6 different potential encounters that you might find around the Preservation. This is my own personal copy, so it's actually got a little bit of coffee staining on it. But you can see the Tallwalker, which I drew right there, number 4 Tallwalkers, and I think I did a pretty good job of capturing what they are in miniature, which is to say that they're strange, methane, swollen, giraffe, squid, flower, vegetarian, creatures that feed upon the floating boulders that move through the preservation. And they're quite big. In terms of miniature height, they're quite tall. They do not, however, they're not big enough to be called titans of the land in any sense. So this booklet, the preservation booklet, I made in November 2021. You can go to my website, connorsb.com, in order to find a copy of it. I think it links over to my itch.io page, and that is where you can download this booklet. So, moving right along, I kept making big guys in September. This is the Hoofed one. This is, and I'll zoom out a little bit. Now you can see a little bit of the setup. Oh, you can read my video script. Oh no. This is the Hoofed one. The Hoofed one is a giant etheric deer that wanders a place called Dead Man's Hollow, which is an industrial ruin about 20 miles south of Pittsburgh. The Hoofed one is huge and beautiful and terrible, and it makes awful noises as it goes across the forest. And this is a small model of a Hoofed one. For scale, at scale, this tree here would be about 10 or 12 feet high. That would be a little sapling. And so the Hoofed one is maybe 50 scale feet tall, with antlers. And in the podcast Dead Man's Hollow, the Hoofed one is hundreds of feet tall, and this miniature, in order to stay at a pretty reasonable fits on the desk scale, is only dozens of feet tall, maybe 50 or 60 feet, maybe 100 feet tall when it's standing, which is reflected by the 15-foot tree that is next to it there. So, the Hoofed one exists in Dead Man's Hollow and also exists in Utopia as one of the titans of the land. And, speaking of which, this is another titan of the land. Oh, and he's big enough that they're interacting. There we go. So this is a Medusa bull. And the Medusa bull is a creature of the Oryx steppes. It's a kind of demonic hell creature that is something like a stench kine, or stench cattle, as they're called in different editions of the Monster Manual. But vast. This would be a small one, similar to the Hoofed one, a miniature with a 4-inch base, which is to say 20 scale feet. Seems pretty large on the tabletop, but is small compared to the true kind of enormous titanic size of such a beast. So this would be just a calf of the larger species of Medusa bulls. So, moving the Hoofed one off, leaving the tree for scale. I had started painting this, but I had not finished the Cosmic Serpent. Nor, I think, had I finished this, Ape Frame 4. Ape Frame 4 is the kind of busted wreck of some kind of giant mechanical monkey, which had been a powered suit or weapon of some kind in the past. It's also part of Newtopia. You'll sense a theme that I am perhaps only making miniatures of things that are part of the book. This still needs work. I have to finish up her gun, and I have to finish up her bandolier. But this is Hugadela, space mercenary. She hates being planet-side, and the thing she hates the most about being planet-side, besides having to deal with titanic beasts like the Medusa bull here, The thing that she hates a lot is that everyone seems to call her a dragon. She's not a dragon, she's an alien, she's a mercenary. Just because she's got wings and horns and is kind of a reptilian dinosaur sauropod creature. Not a dragon. That's nonsense. That's talking nonsense. I think here, well, yeah, I think we're gonna zoom in a little bit because we can. So, I also finished off this Behir, and the Behir is related to the spooky swamps. The spooky swamps are... oh no, sorry, the Behir is not related to the spooky swamps. The Behir is related to the Van Dyne Heights, the Nadnite Heights. And has a kind of ruined column next to it for scale. Having a Lizard Man figurine next to it as well, also for scale, is helpful. There are other creatures that I made that are definitely in the spooky swamps. This is one of them. And so is this statue of a pachyderm. And then I worked on this, which is a kind of frog god. Just to give these folks a little space. And I'm really happy with these because between all of the vegetation, and here's Kami and Hoga, who you saw in the first video, it does seem like all of these have a consistent kind of landscape that they're from. So part of the frog god is that it's maybe a placeholder for a titanoboa, one of these big 40-foot long snakes that once existed on Earth. This would be a kind of cobra titanoboa, which would be, I guess, a titano-cobra. A little bit of an evolution there. And so the frog god functions both as kind of decor and scenery, but also as potentially the base for a 40-foot snake in combat taking up a 15 by 15 foot space. And with the frog god and the snake, I'm moving everything around. About the same time as I was making the frog god and the snake, I got a commission. Stu Horvath with Vintage RPG, the Vintage RPG podcast, sent along 3 sets of miniatures to be painted. There's the first one, the second one, and then a little collection of 3 that's the sort of third one, all caps. And so this is the first, and you'll note that it's similar to the other snake, but very different. This is a very old miniature, absolutely ancient, and I didn't want to do too much to it because I wanted to preserve this historical character of very early kind of miniature painting tech. So I just painted it like a copperhead. Used a lot of metallic paints, which was fun. And I tried to color match these strange little beads, which I picked up at a hobby store. So similar to the frog god here, the snake can come right off of its kind of combat platform. And I liked that idea of a combat platform, and it makes for an interesting challenge trying to paint up a miniature, knowing that the miniature is going to get removed from its base and then maybe put on again, but that, the base should exist to serve the miniature and not the other way around. This miniature is meant to be picked up and handled. It's heavy. It's 4 or 5 ounces by itself. Maybe not that heavy, but I don't know. Maybe it's at least an ounce for sure. Yeah. And the base, I used a real rock here for the rock. The next miniature that I painted was this Otyug. An Otyug. I'm not quite sure how to pronounce that. I don't think anyone has ever been sure how to pronounce that. Is a trash monster, maybe more like a compost monster, really, that lives in the trash and filth of a dungeon or a mine or some other space that's been kind of wrecked and ignored, and is made out of that stuff and is digesting that stuff. It's changed from edition to edition. Sometimes it's an aberration, sometimes it's an elemental, sometimes it's like a shadow monster, but in any case, it's it's like a horrible trash monster. It's very much in the image of the trash compactor monster in Star Wars. And so I thought that I needed to give it like a very appropriate and large base on which it can do its thing. Because the thing about the Otyug, as they're called, is that it's hard to tell where the compost pile starts and ends. It's hard to tell whether the vines growing through them are part of them or not part of them. And so I wanted to pile up a bit of the spooky swamp to show off a kind of unique pile of bones. And so I made this out of a whole bunch of different children's toys that I found at Goodwill that were either already chewed up by someone else's dog or which I used artists' tools to carefully, quote-unquote, chew up and rearrange. This was based on some peas and carrots. It's a little hard to tell, but the square guy is supposed to be cut up carrots, and then the rest is like a stack of peas, which form the base for what I think is a pretty great kind of swamp throne for this guy. So, though he looks a little goofy and multicolored out of context, which he should, he looks goofy and multicolored in context too, because he is growing and living and being a big pile of trash. And, God, if only the rest of us were so clear on our mission in life. Oh no. Man down. Well, let me move this guy out. So I'll be packing these guys up shortly and sending them off. Oh, well, let me leave this here. So, for our third guy, vintage RPG figures, we got, well, I've been painting these lizard men, so I'll throw them up here. But what we got here is the Rowdy Boys. The Rowdy Boys come from the Venatnite Heights, actually the same place as the Behirs. And they are also some Stu Horvath vintage RPG minifigs. They come from a time, long ago. A time where kobolds and ratmen and gnolls were all kind of the same. Maybe not the same, but certainly it was hard to model one without also maybe modeling the other. They all have kind of a Tom of Finland vibe to them. Underneath the fur and scales on the lizard man, there's a certain musculature to these men that you might call strapping, I would say. And painting them was a delight. They're super idiosyncratic. They're very easy to paint. I think the way that they were modeled, you can almost kind of see each individual bit of clay that was created and then kind of cut and attached to the base layer of what these models were made out of. And then I took decorative glass to make the bases. Yeah. Big shout-outs for all of these. Big shout-outs to Strong Tone. Strong Tone is great. It's basically like motor oil, but thin, and it dries fast, and it makes things look greasy and gross and dark, and it really brings highlights out. Or it brings shadows. It adds shadow to the shadowy depths of things, and just generally brings detail out in a way that's wonderful. Also, shout out to Citadel Color Contrast Magma Droth Flame. I spilled this. It permanently stained my desk. That's hilarious. I also used it quite a bit. It makes a really wonderful undercoat for anything that has blood flowing through it. Whether you're painting the skin green because it's a lizard man, or brown because it's a little kobold rat man, or kind of human skin tones because it's a human, or blue or green, or any other kind of skin tone because, hey, fantastical humanoids. Whatever. Melanin is not the only color here on the etheric future past Earth fantastical area. So, yeah, a whole lot of commissions. These will be going back to New Jersey shortly, once I box them all up. I had another set of commissions, which I'll start putting on here as I start bringing these guys off. So, my friend Jay asked me to make a Triceratops, another Triceratops, and a rubber duck. The rubber duck was kind of difficult, but it exists. I'm gonna call this a crashed aerial chariot. These miniatures represent the Sauropalagania, which is translates to sorrow, like the sorrow and sauropod, and then Palagania, which is basin in Spanish. So, the basin of the dinosaurs, the basin of the sauropods. These are Triceratopsids, which also live in the Sauropalagania, and all kinds of creatures, especially the elves of the sun, one of the two groups of elves in the world. There's the solar elves and the lunar elves. At least historically, there was a solar elven nation and a lunar elven nation. But the solar elves did make strange magical mechanical chariots that flew, things like figurines of wondrous power, but at a larger scale, more vehicle-sized. And this would be one of those. This would be a kind of chariot mallard, which has crashed in the desert and is now rusting and broken and burned and part of the landscape, becoming part of the landscape. And Jay asked me to make, he picked these 3 minis out and said, make something with these. So I did. Yeah. I think that's just about everything that I've made over the last month. There's one more thing, which I don't know is going to fit in frame, even if I zoom all the way out. But, oh, right, I know that it won't, because I tried to take formal pictures of it, and it's actually too tall. So, what this is I made this large tower, which has some steps, and which is kind of old and rusted and inaccessible, but which is still lit. It has in the center of it some reflective material and little LED lights, which have their own little batteries, which drop down the center there. And then atop the tower is a figurine of wondrous power of the animal messenger spell, represented by this kind of crying stone cardinal with an enormous number of magical spikes which glow in the dark, radiating from its back. On a table, in context, very cool, very large miniature. Scale feet, it's something like 60 or 80 feet tall, and that's pleasing. It's a pleasingly big thing in the landscape. And it's pleasing in Utopia as well, because it means that when you cast your animal messenger spell, the animal that is able to transmit it to the recipient of the spell does not necessarily need to be the same bird or squirrel which you spoke to immediately. These figurines of wondrous power that dot the landscape connect bird kind on the behalf of spellcasters for the purposes of a bird much closer to the destination, much closer to the person being messaged to, is able to kind of hear the message through a relay network of towers. So I painted a lot. I'm going to kind of leave here now. We're getting up on 30 minutes and I feel duty bound to stop. Thank you for watching this far. Y'all are awesome. Have fun. Bye.